We'll give we'll give you 20 minutes.
Yeah, that's great. I won't need 20 minutes. But
Go ahead.
okay. Okay. Well, I guess I can everybody hear me? Okay. I got a call from Tony and he wanted to know if I would be willing to talk about my experiences in bankruptcy. So I said, sure. And what the topic basically is that I'm going to address is it's how to survive a proposal to your creditors under the Bankruptcy Act. And for small businesses, for small businesses, you go into the Bankruptcy Act and you make a proposal through a trustee. If you're a large business, which is over $5 million, or if your bankruptcy is over 5 million, you go under what's called the CCAA, which is the Company Creditors Arrangement Act, or in the States, it's called Chapter 11. So I've broken the process down into 3 areas. The first one is the emotional environment you're going to be involved with. The second is the planning process. And the third is execution and control of the plan. The emotional landscape is really quite important. That's that your business is in financial trouble. You don't twig onto this right away. And it normally takes several quarters of comparative negative results to the previous year before it dawns on you that you may have a serious problem. And the cause is usually management's inadequate response to the changing marketplace. In our case, it was the arrival of Walmart. They bought out Woolco in 1995. We could make a very nice living next to Woolco stores. They were not that good. Obviously, that's why they sold to Walmart. And Walmart hit Canada with about 100 plus locations right off the bat. But in different businesses, like if you ask Kodak what happened to them, you can imagine that the iPhone managed to change the photo business. And easy credit doesn't help either. When you're successful and the bank's giving you all kinds of money pretty easily, by the time you wake up, you could be in debt quite heavily, because easy credit covers up the need to face the music. You just pay the bills and you just get deeper in debt. That being said, when the message finally hits home that your business is in trouble, your livelihood is at risk, it hits pretty hard. It's very frightening. And you have many sleepless nights trying to figure out how you're going to get out of this. Because if you knew how to get out of it, you'd be out of it. But you're but you're in it. So a lot of people, this is heart attack country or depression. People can go into all kinds of dark areas because they've never been there before. And once you come to terms with the situation, then you have to sit down with your wife and your family, because everybody's at risk here. You could have kids in private school. You could have all kinds of expenses that have to be taken care of. And pretty soon this could all be gone. So you also have looming discussions that you haven't had yet with all your employees. They have families. They are assuming that you're taking care of business properly. They have every confidence in you. So then at some point, you're going to have to explain to them what's going on. And then, of course, you have to face your suppliers who have been with you from the day one and giving you all kinds of credit. Yeah, I have no problem, Jamie. We trust you, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden, you're going to have to meet with all these people and say, I can't pay you. So there's a lot of pressure building. And if you have partners, this can cause another problem because there's a little bit of finger pointing that can happen. I had a partner in Montreal and I had a partner in Newfoundland. My partner in Montreal just took a left turn and said, "That's your problem," because we had a business in Montreal and we had a business in Newfoundland. And about a year prior to that, we decided I would run the one in Newfoundland and he would run the one in Montreal. So he says, "Well, this is your problem. I'm not putting any money in. I'm out of here." Anyway, he said, "Take my shares for nothing." I said, "Well, you're not thinking straight, because, I don't think you realize how, this is salvageable." Anyway, that mistake not taking his shares for nothing cost me about $1 million. Newfoundland is a fairly small community relative to Montreal. So he was a big man in town. And the humiliation and the pressure of making this proposal really affected him badly. And within a year, he wanted to sell out. He just couldn't take the pressure so that he had put upon himself. So it's a very emotional landscape. In the meantime, you got to figure your way out of this. So once it's all dawned on you that you have a problem and you've dealt with the pressure, you've got to find out, well, how are you going to get out of such a situation? So the first person you usually go to is your accountant, because they are not stranger to bankruptcies. Someone in their firm can handle that. So you get consultation with your accountant. Then as you're formulating your plan, then you also go to some trusted business people that you've been friendly with over the years, who give you advice. You have mentors, you have people that have been with you. They can give you some advice, which we got. And then you have to, part of that, of course, is then you got to deal with a trustee, because there's a legal landscape you have to navigate in order to make your proposal. And you also, once you've done all this, you have to determine who the enemies are. And they can be boiled down into three groups, really. The bank, even though if you read the ads, they're not your enemy, but when you got financial problems, big problems. So they're your number one enemy. You have to neutralize your bank. The second one is landlords, because they have a big stake in your business and they don't give up easily. And now, especially, it's tough because you're dealing with REITs as opposed to individual people. So once you're dealing with a functionary, it's going to be more difficult. And then the third one is the trustee. He's also your enemy, because most of these trustees like to take over. And every time they charge you, $500 for a piece of paper. So you have to watch your trustee. So the only way you're going to survive a proposal in bankruptcy is you have to control the entire process, and you have to preserve your liquidity. So three things you've got to, well, I guess the three things are, like I said, you got to control the process, you got to maximize your liquidity, and you got to control the timing. So the easy one to control is your trustee. If you're in charge, you pick the trustee. If the bank's in charge, they pick the trustee. So you got to be ahead of the game, and you got to pick your own trustee, and you have to sit down and negotiate a fixed fee. But if you negotiate a fixed fee, that means you do all the work, and he just shepherds you through the process, which is what we did. In our case, we agreed to $25,000, and we had a trustee. It was Deloitte Touche at the time. They probably merged into 4 different companies by then. But we fixed it at $25,000, and we did the work. He told us what he had. So we didn't have a $300 an hour secretary or a clerk or whatever, because you're trying to preserve all the cash you can, because you got to pay your suppliers. Because without your suppliers, you're dead meat. You also have to negotiate with your landlords. they have a huge stake in your business, and they will negotiate with you if you have a human being to deal with. And you get them under control. And then the bank. As I said, easy credit can kill you because you may be too deep. Like when we realized where we were, we owed the bank $750,000. Now in 1996, that's a fair hunk of change. So how do we get rid of the bank? Well, you just can't wave a magic wand. You need time. So it took us 9 months to get the bank down to about $17,000. And because, and also during that time, at what point do you talk to your banker? If it's too early, you could have a problem, because when you talk to the banker, he's all very nice and everything else, but he's got a career. And in those days, you could actually talk to a banker. I don't know if you can really talk to a banker today because it's divided up so many ways, but then we could talk to the banker. And what happens to you when you talk to the banker is you go to what they call the trouble desk. And the trouble desk, their job is to protect the bank. They don't give a damn about you, your employees, your suppliers. They don't care about anything except their money. So at the trouble desk, what they do is systematically cut down your credit. So if you owe them 500, next month they've cut it down to 400. Where are you going to get the extra 100? The following month it's 300, then 200. So they keep squeezing you, but they don't want to put you out of business because they still want their money. So you don't want to go to them too early, but you don't want to go to them too late, because in the final analysis, nobody's going to touch you if you survive. You won't have a bank. You can't go from the Bank of Montreal to the TD Bank or the Royal Bank and say, well, you're bankrupt or you have no credit. So you're not going to be successful in going from one bank to another. And even in your own bank, what will happen is that it'll be dollar for dollar. We can't give any credit. You have no history. So therefore, just to give you an example about easy credit, that's one of the lessons you learn, is I don't want any more easy credit. So in those days, we had a line of about 750,000 for let's say an $8 million business. Today we operate with a 900,000 line for a $28 million business. Like, you want the lights to go off early, not late. So that was a very, very important lesson. So once you do all your research and you've got all your, you come up with a plan, you have to develop a strategy. So you can't execute your strategy until the bank is under control. And by that, I mean, if they call the loan, can you pay them off? Because if they call the loan and you can't pay them off, you lose control. So you have to get the bank to a point where if they don't cooperate, you can pay them out. And it's only then can you execute your strategy. And that means at that point, the trustee files your intention, notice of intention to file a proposal. It's called an NOI under the Bankruptcy Act. And once they do that, everything stops. Once the trustee files the NOI, then you have 30 days where no one can touch you, and you can prepare your proposal. But the timing is so important, because you can only pull the trigger after your big revenue season. In our case, it was after Christmas. You don't want to pull a trigger before Christmas because you're going to be looking everywhere for money when you need it. So you have to keep the business alive until after Christmas. And in different businesses, I suppose the timing is different. So in our case, we didn't want to pull the trigger till after Christmas. In the meantime, you're paying everybody slowly, and you're building your liquidity, and you're balancing everything. And then when you just, when you pull a trigger, then you're talking to your employees about what's going on. And they're in shock because, they never believed this could happen. But you've been living with this already for about a year and a half. And you got to move fast so that you've got to be in touch with all your major suppliers. Rick Sala was one of my major suppliers. I gave him a call, and I think you were at the airport or something. And I said, Rick, where's the effect? I've got a problem. I know I owe you $40,000, but this is the situation. So he says to me right off the bat, don't pay me too much, because he needs a customer. So if you make too much, if your proposal is too rich, you won't be able to survive, because you've got to get through one season and then go on to the next. So, which was not, the big suppliers turned out not to be our problem. It was the small suppliers who think you're stealing from them. The $1,000 people or the $1,500 people, the $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 people, they want to make sure you stay alive because you've done business with them for 15 years. They want you for another 15. So what's wrong with losing money for 1 year? So you've got to move quickly. You've got to get them in line, so that, because in order to win your proposal, you need 50 plus 1% of the creditors that represent 2/3 of the value owed. So you got to make sure you have all the votes before the creditors meeting, so that you can get through the creditors meeting and move on. So, and you also, the advice we got from doing our research was, you don't want to operate under the pressure of or the veil of bankruptcy, or the black cloud of bankruptcy, too long. So you want to make your deal, get in and out of it within the one fiscal year, and then you're away to the races. So some people make proposals for 30 cents on the dollar or 20 cents on the dollar, payable over 5 years, and they think they're doing a great thing. But you lose a lot of confidence. If you're without your suppliers, you can't survive. So if you treat them well, they'll be with you. And in our case, we offered them 50 cents on the dollar, payable within 1 year. So we made our proposal in beginning of February. We had one payment in June and the final payment in December, and then we were done. Our fiscal year was the end of January. So we had 1 year of operating under a cloud, and that was it. We didn't want to drag it out, and we didn't want to make money on it. We just wanted to survive, because we were looking for the long term. And if you're looking for the long term, you can make it. If you're looking to rip everybody off with this deal, you probably won't make it, in my view. So once your proposal is accepted, which is pretty easy to do once you've done all the negotiations and everything else, you have to realize that no bank is going to be there for you. You have to basically self-finance. So your own personal finances better be in order, because you're not going to be taking a salary probably for a year. All the money goes back into the business if you're going to survive. If you don't do that, things could be a bit dicey. So, because the interesting thing is once you proceed after the meeting, is you go to write an order. Well, everybody's all uptight by this point. Even the people that have been with you, they say, well, how are you going to pay for it? So they want usually 50% up front, the balance in 30 days. And even though I said to them, like, I have no creditors. It's not the first order you got to worry about. It's the fifth order you're going to have to worry about. But that falls on deaf ears. The fog of war just clouds everybody's thinking, and they want, they're so terrified to sell you. But after a few orders, it works. But like I said, it's the fifth order if you're getting orders in March, by the time you hit June and you make your first payment, it's the subsequent orders that are going to be more dicey than the first one.
LCC?
Beg your pardon? Oh, okay.
Okay.
Am I getting an
LCC?
echo? Oh, I see. Okay. I thought it was, I don't know. I thought someone was talking to me. Anyway, the amazing thing about operating under the Bankruptcy Act for that year was all your budgets are tighter. Your antennae is up. You're looking at every penny. You're managing your staff. You're managing your margins. You're aware of every sale. Your whole level of management increases because you get the reason you got in trouble is you got a bit sloppy. And so, you know, like I say, you're not drawing a paycheck, but you're keeping your business intact, and everybody works at a much higher level. And even to this day, which is 25 years later, the chap who is my partner now and general manager has been with me for 35 years. He still remembers working with me under what we call protection. The lessons we learned there have carried the business to where it is today. And after, you know, the lessons we learned were immeasurable. And that's why I said, like, I got my second MBA going through that process. And even though the bank relations are sort of at zero during that time, it's still important to try and have communication because no one else is going to touch you. And the interesting thing is, I'm still with the same bank because I couldn't go anywhere. And when you go to I referred to the trouble desk back a while back. And I remember we were looking at every penny and watching every penny. And this guy at the trouble desk, he was the manager from hell. He says, you know, Jamie, I think we need a little bit more security. He says, what do you need? You know, they have everything so far, but they need one more thing. He wanted a debenture on the business. I said, well, you do what you have to do. So next thing I knew, the 8,000 was ripped out of our account. I said, what's that 8,000 for? That was for the debenture. I said, well, you didn't tell me it was going to cost me $8,000. I needed that money to pay supplier X or supplier Y. So anyway, it's now 25 years later. And every time they try and raise my bank fees, I remind them about the 8,000 they stole from me. And even though I've had multiple managers, my bank fees are still $800 a month. So because I've used that against them, and they are also horrified this could possibly happen. So if you use every little thing, it can come back to help you. And you know, once the objective of the final payment is achieved, which we did at the beginning of December that year, like we filed in February, we made one payment in our first payment was June, I believe, and the second payment was midway through December. We were done. And although we had dropped down to, I guess it was 5 stores or 4 or 5 stores, we did $5.5 million that year. It's laid the foundation for future growth, which is, I'm still working. It's 25 years later. So everybody's flourishing and the business is healthy. And it was thanks, I think, to that. Oh, yeah. Oh, okay.
I can start with somebody else has. And this is just on this one for the last minute there. You went down from what, 6 stores to 4 or 7 to 5.
Yeah.
The process, how did you make that decision? I presume it's like we've been our worst stores, we got rid of them or whatever. But what was the process of doing that? and how much is that helping?
Well, we took our stores that were right next to Walmart's. Walmart, when they took over Woolco, they were clearing stuff out at 10 or 15 cents on a dollar for years. We couldn't compete with that. When I went to the landlord, I said, like, how do you expect me to survive? I can't give away milk forever, you know? He says, what do you want me to do? Get rid of Walmart? So I said, no, but you can get rid of me. So anyway, he said, well, I had the same landlord in a couple of stores that were next to these Walmarts that they had used for clearing houses. We worked out a deal where I only had to stay, let's say, for the next 6 months, paying only the utilities, etc. And I wanted to get rid of them before making a proposal, because if you make a proposal and your landlords are not online, they're allowed and get priority for 6 months rent, which would really hurt my ability to pay my suppliers 50 cents on the dollar. So we made a deal. These guys were pretty cagey. They didn't want to write it down, but they allowed me to pay the utilities and allowed me to leave. Remember, nothing's in writing, which was all fine. And I thought they were men of their word. Anyway, 6 months less, 6 years less, a couple of weeks, I get a bailiff's letter saying suing me for $250,000 from these guys, right? So because they said that I deliberately excluded them from the proposal that happened. Like I'd worked my deal with them in June. I made my proposal in February. When I made my deal with them in June, I had no idea I was going to make a proposal, just as things got worse. Anyway, that was regulated, and we solved that problem for about $13,000, because I had a very good friend who was one of my suppliers who happened to be one of their investors. That's I said, what's going on? I told him what the story was. He says, what do you mean? So he phoned up the guys who were suing me, and they said, well, basically it was extortion. So I would, instead of 250, they'd want 100 or something. Anyway, 13,500, but I lost a year's sleep again. But I had to get rid of the bad stores, because in the particular area I was working in, which was Newfoundland, I could still reach all my customers. If I was in Montreal, it would be very difficult. But in Newfoundland, it's concentrated, so I could still compete with Walmart one-to-one and getting something to the customer's door. So that's one of the reasons I was able to survive. But I had to get out of the bad stores that were just next to the Walmarts that were clearing goods.
So today there's nothing in Montreal and it's all papers.
Yeah, well, my partner and I in Montreal, we split. So he took Montreal, I took Newfoundland. That was an aftermath.
Montreal.
Nothing. They've gone.
I presume that we were talking about the bank asking for more guarantees. At some point, I imagine they asked for a personal guarantee.
Oh yeah, that was first.
At what point you? It sounds to me that you were fortunate in the sense that you were able to ultimately take proposal.
Yeah,
as opposed to declaring bankruptcy.
that's right. It's a proposal under the Bankruptcy Act.
Capital One, basically.
Yeah.
That gives you the time to make deals.
Exactly.
What would bankruptcy have done to you? Not personally, but just to the business in general. Would it have been sold off? Could it have survived at all?
It would have been liquidated and gone. Yeah, but it was my life. So I had to do something. When it came down to making the proposal, you look and see, okay, luckily I wasn't in debt. I had no mortgages. I had savings, and I had always been very conservative. So I didn't have to take money for a year. If you were living a high life, that would kill you. because how are you going to service your own debts and take care of the company at the same time? So it's very, very important to make sure the money goes into the company when it has to. A lot of people live off the company very high. We didn't.
Anybody else? Ron?
Amy, a very good presentation, corporate point of view. I went through something very similar from a personal point of view, which might be relevant in today's world, because I was high in mortgage debt. I decided to downsize the house, ended up with 2 houses, 40 market, where my interest payment was $17,000 a month.
Wow.
And in today's world, and this is when interest rates are 12%. But the people who mortgage themselves at 0.9, 1 point something, and are now looking at 5, 6, 7, 8, could be going through something like that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I always make a mistake and say, I want to know where I'm going to live before I sell. Right.
Yeah. Go ahead.
How do you compare a startup, how you felt dealing with a startup versus the bankruptcy part? You know, when you were watching everything and you were looking at every sale that came in, every order that came in versus your startup, you know, when you were getting going, how you behave post-bank.
Well, when we were starting, we were in the same mindset as we were when we were trying to survive the bankruptcy. Success. And you know, we were an instant success when we opened our stores. We were the only discounters around, and we thought we were really smart. And so we had delusions of grandeur, which makes you a little bit sloppy. We thought we were smart, and we didn't realize that we were riding also a wave. And so that's what delayed us in recognizing the bad signs. Well, you know, just a minor glitch. And we had such such success early on that it clouded our vision as we hit the bad times. We didn't believe it was possible. It sounds crazy because everyone can read numbers, but you don't take them as seriously as they're really showing you. You take it as a minor glitch. I hesitate to say the bank is the problem. I mean, everybody likes easy credit, but when you have easy credit, it makes you sloppy, in my opinion. It can make it takes your eye off the ball. Oh, yes. Yeah, I mean, once you go through your proposal in bankruptcy, you can read the tea leaves. You know your business. I mean, when I'm running the business now, I can see how the tea leaves are falling, and I can help steer the business because I can recognize the signs. But I remember a conversation with my father after one of our great years. And I said to him, you know, Eddie and I, we made $500,000 this year. And all he did is shake his head. He said, I said, why are you shaking your head? He said to me, you're making it too easy. And he was 100% right.
Spend time, teaching them how, what not to, how, not to.
Once I'd bought out my original partners, the chap who is my partner now has been with me for 35 years. He went through the whole process. And, you know, I'm 75 years old. I can't live forever. So I'm in the process of selling out the business, and he'll take more and more of it, as, you know, he's buying it at a profit. So he'll more or less take over the business ultimately. I don't have to teach him. He's been with me and he can run the business better than I can on the ground. That's for sure.
Jamie? We're gonna throw you out of here.
Okay.
Thank you very, very much.
You're most welcome.
If you're looking for the notes, we have them here.